And welcome to another Ecopunk Salon, recorded live in front of a studio audience. And this week, we're going to be looking at the power of digital platforms. And by digital platforms, I mean, these days, that pretty much includes just about everything. I mean, what isn't a digital platform these days? Zoom, ostensibly, is a digital platform. LinkedIn is, of course, a digital platform. And normally we have these salons begin with a provocation in which we invite one of our participants to say something that is meant to get our brains thinking. But today, in part because we've got a couple of new participants, instead we're going to do a go round where each of us will sort of give a brief intro, but the purpose of the intro is not really to say who you are or what you do. Instead, the question is, what is your preferred digital platform? What is the digital platform that you find yourself going to most often? Or what is the digital platform that you find the most fruitful or productive or entertaining? And I'll go first as an example. My favorite platform is TikTok. I'm obsessed with TikTok. In fact, I'm often addicted to TikTok. But for the record, I love TikTok because I feel that the algorithm serves me exactly the kind of knowledge and intelligence I desire. It's partly because it's an interest graph instead of a traditional kind of social graph algorithm. But TikTok is something that I want to spend more time on, that I want to think about more and produce content for. So I offer this as both it's something that I'm excited about, but it's also something I'm relatively new when it comes to being a creator. So with that said, we'll go around the circle and I'll ask Jan to go first. And Jan, in addition to describing what your preferred platform is, I would then like you to pass it on to who you would like to go next so that each person, after they say what their digital platform is, it's your job to highlight or call out someone else in the salon to answer the same question. So go
Yeah,
ahead, Jan.
beautiful. Yeah, my favorite and preferred platform is very straightforward, Instagram, because I feel it offers me the most opportunity to express, the little things that I have to express. Plus, I feel that I got a handle on it. I feel I figured it out. So on Instagram, I feel more like, the subject, right, of the action instead of the object. And that's why I like Instagram. And I would like to, hear next, Andrea, from you.
Well, I have to go with TikTok. I have to admit, I'm obsessed with it. It's a rabbit hole. I don't know if the algorithm is doing me any favors because all I keep seeing now is Taylor Swift and Kelsey
What?
nonstop. So, as much as I love football and as much as, I wouldn't call myself a Swiftie, it's a little overkill at the moment, but I do enjoy just scrolling. And if you don't like it, just keep going. It's got that endorphin rush that just keeps you addicted to it. I'm not a content producer on it. I'll go to Instagram and post pictures of my dog, and that's about the extent of my contribution to creatively sharing anything. But I find it amusing, entertaining. If you don't like it, like I say, just keep scrolling along. Um, I don't know who to pass it on to because I really don't know the folks on the salon. So I don't know, Lynn Chow. I can see your name. That's why I'm picking you.
Okay, great. I would say mine's Instagram too. For a few reasons. Like Jesse, it's the algorithm gets me. I like art, I like music, I like dance, and it sort of pops up all the things I love. And my secret recipes all come from there. And it's also a way that maybe this is too much information that I hang out with my husband because we both love Instagram and we post a lot. So it's sort of our way of communicating and hanging out too. So I'm going to pass on to Silky.
Oh, while you're not muted, we can't hear you. Do you want to check your microphone setting in Zoom there? And while you're doing that, Sharita, why don't you jump in? We'll give Silky a second.
Okay. So my favorite platform is Amazon. The reason I'm saying that is because after 3 years, it knows me intimately and will send me messages when I'm about to run out of bath bomb. So, I have a very good relationship with Amazon. But what I want to say is that there's all kinds of platforms. I mentioned an e-commerce one. There are lots of platforms. If I want to be entertained, I'll go along with what, many people have said. I like TikTok, makes me laugh.
Your point about Amazon, though, is important. It's why we deliberately called this salon digital platforms and not necessarily social media.
Exactly.
Silky, do you want to try again? And if you notice by the mute button, there's usually a little up arrow that allows you to select different inputs potentially. And then if not, no, sorry, we still can't hear you.
Think your not most favorite platform is Zoom.
Well, Christian, why don't you go next? What's your favorite platform?
First of all, it sounds a bit like social media anonymous because everybody seems to be addicted to some kind of social media or digital platform. Mine is Instagram as well because I'm a photographer and it used to be the platform for photographers, but now it's more into video, but it still is. And I wake up every morning and I have a friend of mine who sends me, he's a pilot and he's always somewhere else in the world. And mostly I wake up in the morning and I have like 20 reels to look at. So yeah, it's also a lot of fun, but it's also a huge waste of time.
Hence the, hi, I'm Jesse and I'm an addict. So, a fellow addict, Christian, who would you like to nominate next?
So maybe Silke again. Try again.
No, I think her audio's not working. So try again, Christian, in terms of you throwing to someone else.
Oh, so I go to my fellow German Jens.
Right. So my favorite digital platform is a digital EcoPunk saloon because you find a lot of great people, you have nice topics, everything's great. No, to be honest, I love LinkedIn. Perhaps I'm the only one here in the room. I love LinkedIn because I'm a content creator in terms of topics on branding, everything around branding. I love branding. And this is a great platform for me to write and also to learn about branding. And for my oyster business, it is Instagram and Facebook. So I also love to write about oysters and to post and to see what other oyster producers do in France or Ireland or UK or US. So it's a great platform to learn from others as well.
Right on. And who would you like to nominate next?
Okay. The one and only here in our room, Silke. We try. Last try, Silke.
I think Silke is busy
She's
trying to
completely off.
debug. Yes,
Oh, God.
she's debugging, so she can't even hear us because the headphones are not in.
Holy. Okay, I don't know. Merle. I think we haven't heard you yet. huh?
No, not yet.
Right. Go ahead.
So I was gonna say that my favorite platform is Steam, which is probably one of, if not the largest online game stores. But I would actually say it's itch.io, which is a smaller but somewhat more friendly to game developers platform for distributing games, game assets. With Steam, you get potentially more exposure, but you have to pay to get your game up, and they also take a commission. With itch.io, they give you similar tools in terms of building a web page for your game, but you don't have to pay anything to upload it to a certain size. And you can also take payments through itch.io. So I would say itch.io.
Right on. And who are you going to nominate, Merle?
I will nominate Rob.
Thank you. I accept the torch. It's I'm one of those people who find it difficult to find something I like. There's a lot of things I don't like, so I heard addiction a number of times, and my mind immediately went to something like Candy Crush. Is that a platform? Well, it's just a game, right? But it's sucking so much information from its users. They have no idea, and as does many uh, social media applications and platforms, sucking so much. And why should I be concerned about that? I have nothing to hide, right? Or do I? I'll go with Zoom as my favorite, or it's my oft-used one, and probably by gist of I work with a lot of people who have various sensory and other uh, challenges, lack fine dexterity and such, and Zoom amongst all of the video conferencing platforms tends to be most accessible. So that's my vote.
Right on. And we've got two left, David and Stro. So Rob, out of David and Stro, who will you nominate? Oh, you muted yourself, so we can't hear you who you're nominating.
I'm going to point at the person. That's going to be Stro.
And you're muted, Stro. So we can't hear you, Stro.
Let me step
Gotcha. Okay, sorry, my fingers are fat. So I actually have a question for you, Jesse. Before I answer this question, what do you define as a platform? Because it's like, is Notes a platform? Is like Adobe Illustrator a platform, or Photoshop, or does it have to be something interactive where you interact with other people or an algorithm or something?
Excellent question, Stro. And I think as Rob was alluding, the definition is open. So
Okay.
Candy Crush absolutely could be a platform, right? And by platform, I think we're bringing a subjective definition to it, but I would describe it more as something you keep coming back to, that you're sitting on or you're standing on or you're spending time on. So yes, an app could definitely be a platform, the same way a board game arguably could be a kind of platform.
Right. So I think I think I have a few favorites in that case. For social media platform, it's going to be Instagram for same reasons as mentioned before. I'm a photographer and an artist, and but I also like to add a little bit of story, so it's very accessible. When it comes to gaming, it's unfortunate, but I think it's OLG. I think they got me hooked on their slots.
Now, you should, for non-Ontario residents, explain what you mean by OLG.
So it's like an online casino basically, right? It's gambling. And then I think when it comes to just overall, I like the Adobe platform because it's actually where I get to create, but Procreate is really good as well. So I will nominate David or pass the conch to David.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay,
nominate.
great.
Nominate.
I use Twitter, and I use it to follow wars and politics in Canada and the US. And but I'm getting bored by it. And in the last few days, I've actually returned to what I think might be a platform, and that is the Toronto Public Library system, which has an enormous array of resources that keeps becoming more platform-like every time I return to it.
Right on. And Silky, do you want to take one last shot, or do you think it's not going to work?
Let me try. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God. So sorry. I don't know what's happening, but I'm glad it's working now. And sorry if I missed a couple of things, but for me, it's also Instagram. It's definitely the number one. Reason is because it's for me, it's a mix of staying connected with friends, seeing what they're doing, what they're up to. I'm a little bit more shy with what I'm posting, but I'm pretty much on there every day. There's a little bit of news that I'm getting. I have a couple of news accounts that I'm following, which I enjoy, and the algorithm works for me as well. I'm getting ads that make sense for me. So it's entertaining. I enjoy it. The TikTok thing for me, I would love to learn a little bit more. I've tried it a few times. I go there and I just leave. It's too much for me. It's too crazy for me. Maybe I'm too old for it. I don't know, but maybe I need to spend more time. I wanna like it, but I haven't quite warmed up to it. Let's put it that way.
Well, and what I found fascinating about this go round is the language we use to describe it. And Silky, your last point about signal to noise, right? That many of us get turned off platforms because we can't find the signal, right? And, David was talking about Twitter. And in my own case, I used to love Twitter, but I can't use it anymore because I find it's so much noise. It's that same thing where I turn it off. And, I also like the notion that this was social media anonymous, right? As Christian mentioned, that we're all kind of talking about being hooked or being addicted. And similarly, Lynn, I liked your point about how it's kind of part of your relationship with your partner, in that I have a similar habit where I collect all these TikToks that I then take to my partner and be like, oh, look at all these TikToks I've collected for you. So part of what I wanted to accomplish today is both kind of get a sense of what we thought of as platforms. And I think our different answers gave glimpses into that. But the other was, what are some of the issues that we should be thinking about when using these platforms? This could be as simple as best practices, both as users and creators. It could be understanding the value of platforms we're not using or we're not familiar with. In my own case, I've neglected LinkedIn for years, and I'm only now, enjoying Jens, the way you use LinkedIn, and trying to understand how to successfully connect and leverage this stuff. The same way it was interesting that a bunch of you really are, I don't want to use the word loyal, but are seeing value in Instagram and go to Instagram on a daily or multi-daily basis. So I highlight this as all potential threads for us to unpack. As Jan has thankfully demonstrated, if you want to chime in, you can raise your hand using the Zoom option. We won't necessarily do any further go-rounds, but let's dig a little deeper into why these platforms have the appeal or don't have the appeal. And further, it's interesting that no one really brought up ChatGPT as a platform, which may reflect that none of us are particularly enamored with it, but it is ostensibly the hottest platform around, and the one that is has the potential to impact different businesses, but also impact different platforms in terms of what we get from them. So that's my kind of general overview, and I'm curious where we sort of go from here. So Jan, please jump in.
Yeah, I thought the question, what makes a platform was a really, really good one. And I love the examples of Candy Crush, but also of Amazon there, right? Because I would not have thought of Amazon, but as Sharita was explaining it, you basically meet like-minded people, or you get prompted what people like you ordered in a similar session. Plus, at times it can be interesting and even entertaining. If you read the book reviews on Amazon, they're hilarious. They're at times better than the books themselves, right? So, I find this from a creator perspective interesting, right? What can be a platform? And from a user perspective, I come back to what I volunteered or brought forward as a rationale for why I like Instagram, because I feel I know how to use it and how to extract value from it, instead of the other way around. So I think that is really, really important, and is becoming more important as consumers become more mature.
Well, and I think you highlighted a potential conflict, which on the one hand, there is a kind of adversarial relationship where, whether it's our attention, whether it's our personal information, the platforms want something from us, and it's up to us to get that value back out of the platform. And Stroh kind of alluded to this when Stroh asked what a platform was. And I think interactivity is not a prerequisite, right? I think, Jan, what you just described was not interactivity, it was exchanging value. But I'm not sure that interactivity is always present or is even realistic in terms of its role. But I'm kind of mumbling because I haven't fully thought that out. So Lynn, please jump in while I try to think my thought a little clearer.
I was just thinking of that aspect of community, like Silky also brought up. For me, I started on Instagram because I'm an artist, and my artist friends all post on Instagram. So I had to open it in order to see their sketches and drawing. But now it is a community for me that I exchange. So I'm invested in it because, you know, that's where my friends are, and that's how we communicate, right? And I think that's kind of sets it apart, and maybe that's why I'm a little addicted to it, and that's why I post so much. So there's something there about how this platform is used and how this platform is, I would attracting users like me. And it's very hard for me to not use it anymore because I'm completely embedded in it. My life is embedded in it.
See, I have an equally problematic relationship with Facebook, because I found it interesting that only Jens sort of mentioned Facebook, and that was in the context of business, in your defense, Jens. But Lynn, I have a similar relationship with Facebook, that I keep kind of going back to it because there are certain family members who that's the only way that I'm going to know what those nieces are up to. You know, when I call their dad, we talk about our stuff. But to get access to the larger family, Facebook provides that kind of weak ties. But I'm so invested in it that it's difficult to kind of get out. Andrea, please jump in.
Yeah, just kind of building on the Facebook, it's the interesting how the evolution, you know, it kind of started with Facebook, and that group or community grew from college students to general people, and then Instagram and Snapchat, and they've kind of like had their peak of excitement and engagement, and then they've kind of drifted away. And maybe Facebook now is for the older folks. Younger kids are not really on it. They're more on TikTok or something yet to be discovered. I mean, even Snapchat has taken a dive. So it's kind of got its own little ecosystem of how things rise up, become really popular, people get excited about, and then they're looking for the next great thing. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what comes next.
Well, and
Older
that's
people, for the
sorry,
older
go ahead,
people,
Jan.
I was saying for the older people and for the Germans. No, because I share that experience with Facebook, and that might be an age thing too, right? My experience is that my German community, which dates already quite some decades back, is primarily on Facebook, while everyone else is on Instagram. I also noticed that the media consumption varies a lot between Facebook and Instagram. So I would argue that stories get much more views on Instagram in comparison to Facebook. And, you know, I think that is the beautiful thing for every single one of us as we string together our very own ecosystem of social media channels as we want to use them. You know, that we can use each channel to their advantage, basically.
Stro, jump in.
Yeah, you know, something that just became evident to me with this discussion is that, you know, I think we're a tribal species, right? So we get onto something that we're comfortable with, and where our social network lies is kind of probably what we stick to, though, because, you know, we're also motivated by getting some reward from trying something new, whatever. We tend to go the other places, but maybe we date ourselves by saying, "Oh, we're on Instagram," because I know my kids are all about Snapchat, for example, or Discord, right? So I think the thing that comes from that thought is you know, because media is so fragmented, or our platforms are so fragmented now, right? Because everybody's got a piece of the pie, so to speak. Is there a way, you know, and I think it's the problem with the world, actually, that we don't have a unified platform where there's such a disconnect between people and ideas, and that's why there's so much polarization in so many ways in the world. And it's like, how do we get somewhere where we have something like when you and I had Much Music growing up, and it united us with everybody across the country because the media and the stories we shared were the same. So I guess my question is there a way to make sense of the world more with these different platforms. Something that I think we're gonna need, because who listens to news anymore? Again, it's so
Well,
fragmented, right?
And I think you just sort of made that argument in reverse, that news is dead precisely because we can get information from such a diverse range of sources, that there's no longer an authoritative or a central narrative or central voice. Instead, there's every voice that you could imagine. And yes, that fragments, but it is also empowering when it comes to diversity, that you are getting such a range of voices participating in these public conversations. Now, Murley has his hand up, but Jens, I'm about to call upon you to elaborate on what you meant by training the algorithm, because I think that is a very important concept. So Murley and Sharita, and then Jens, be prepared to be called out to talk about that, because I think that's a really a relevant dynamic. But Murley, please jump in.
Now you've got someone sweating there, Jesse. Great, well done.
I think the whole idea of news is dead is, I mean, at least in Canada, especially true for Facebook, insofar as you can't actually post links to news stories anymore. That has been disabled. But I think the idea of the unified platform is interesting. I kind of feel like we need the diversity precisely because of that idea of signal to noise. I think if there was one platform, it would all be noise because you'd be getting everything. And I just think a lot of what we've been talking about is sort of dependency on these ecosystems for social relationships. But sort of going back to what we were talking about last time, in our last salon, there's also the personal side. Like, a lot of people depend on Google Photos or iCloud to store their pictures and have it recall memories, or Google Drive for their documents or whatever, whether it's Microsoft. And we're very dependent on those systems for our personal information as well. That is just for ourselves, or personal data, and of course the social aspect as well. But again, those different platforms do have very specific demographics. I was using Facebook from the ages of 9 to 13, at which point I pretty much entirely stopped. And I spent a bit of time on Instagram. And these days, I think, at least for people my age, Instagram is one of the main ways people connect. Also, no one has mentioned Be Real, which I think came out in 2016. I'm not on Be Real myself, but I've noticed that a lot of people I've encountered and met who are my age are. And so that's like another one there that people connect on. I think it is very demographic specific.
Right on. Sharita.
I think that really what happens to us with almost any of the platforms that we use is that not so much that we're getting different news or different views, but we tend to follow our friends onto different platforms and watch what they do on different platforms. So in essence, I don't think it's really opening us up to a lot of opinions. I think really what's happening is through various and serial social media platforms, we are still constructing an echo chamber that supports our own views, etc. I remember when I was teaching, I would tell my students, just for fun, and maybe if you want to tell me about it for grades, go and follow somebody you would never follow and see what happens when you do that. Like in the old days, go watch Fox for a few hours. And my whole class would go, I don't want to do that, etc. But I think what happens is we tend to form an echo chamber.
Well, and I think it's, to use the analogy, the physical analogy, if you're the kind of person who at a party is comfortable walking up and talking to strangers, then you would probably be the kind of person who would join a social network without having any friends already as users. Versus if you're shy and you're used to being invited to a party where you already know people, then yes, you're probably going to go onto a social network. But the reason I wanted to bring Jens into this, in part because of the comment you posted, is the algorithms obviously play a very powerful role in terms of shaping the user experience on these platforms. And, you know, Jens, I think you sort of take for granted your high level of literacy, that to you, the idea of training an algorithm is self-evident. But I would argue that most people don't even think that training the algorithm is an option, that they're perhaps not exercising the level of agency or mindfulness that many of us do when it comes to fine-tuning that algorithm. So I'm curious, from your own experience, Jens, what do you do to train the algorithm, and how have you found that method has varied results? Like, it works differently on Instagram than it does on LinkedIn or it does on Facebook. I'm curious your experiences as someone who perhaps is experienced at training algorithms.
Well, I'm not an expert in this. It's just coming from my own experience, as you said. But it's coming back to what Sharida said about the own ecosystem. So what we can do is to build our own positive ecosystems on the digital platform. So that's a positive thing. So, for example, if you watch a lot of cat videos for a long time, then the algorithm will learn, okay, Sharida loves cat videos, and what the algorithm will do, she will see a lot of cat videos. So if you look at shitty content for a long time, then the algorithm will send you more shitty content. So in positive terms, what I do in terms of my small oyster business, so I write articles about oysters. And I look always only on oyster-related content. And now I only get oyster-related content. I never get any shitty cat videos or whatsoever, because I've never looked at them. So if you make it to your own discipline, not to look, okay, it might be interesting to look at some funny cat videos, but it's bad for the algorithm. So if you want to have a nice content feed, then you better avoid this. And this works on Facebook as same as on LinkedIn. So you can build your own positive ecosystem.
It strikes me, Jan, that the method that Jens is offering is almost monk-like, right? Like the discipline to not get trapped in my case, it's puppy videos, but you know, all the cute and attention-grabbing and clickbait content on the internet. Jan, are you able to resist diverging from your focus when it comes to the algorithm? Now, you've got your hand up, which is why I'm throwing to you, but I'm kind of curious if you also train the algorithm or think about the ways in which you could train the algorithm.
So first of all, I want to say there's nothing wrong with cat videos, right? They're not only funny, but
sorry.
all of us can learn from them, and the world would be a better place if all dictators in the world would watch cat videos for 10 minutes starting their days. I actually applaud Jens for the way that he trains algorithms. And I absolutely trust Jens that his method works in his case, because he is a very, very disciplined person, right? This would not work in my case. And I found myself actually, and we have not spoken about this, Jesse, this is surprising, but I found myself last weekend going through these settings on Instagram, you know, hide ads like this. Why do I see these ads, right? In the future, block ads like this for reasons X, Y, and Z. And I thought, oh, this is great. This gives me an opportunity to moderate my own content. But then I thought, hey, wait a minute, you know, this is a circus. I'm the animal here, and I'm training the trainer on how to make me jump better through hoops. So that didn't feel exciting either, and I stopped right then. I really do believe the answer is in using them as actively and purposefully as Jens has laid that out, but mix it up with a cat video every now and then, because you know, otherwise we'd all be as boring as Jens is.
Right on. And Andrea has her hand up, and Silky, I see you have your hand up too, so we'll throw to you after Andrea. Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I'm kind of building on the algorithm as being, you're building it and you're following something banal like just cat videos or whatever. But the danger, obviously, is how the algorithm can manipulate you and bring you down a rabbit hole, a la what happened with the political situation here in the United States, where whoever Q is, was perpetuating all these crazy, conspiracy theories about Pizzagate or what have you. So it does have a danger system, like a little bit uncomfortable. It is something I guess I think about. I'm hopefully not getting sucked in by, my viewing on TikTok into some weird conspiracy world, but it is a danger, I think. And I think we become more tribalism, because then you self-perpetuating, follow these things and you really believe them. And it's could be something that there's going to have to be some controls put into place, I think.
Well, and I wonder about that all the time, only because I like to think that I have a high level of media literacy, and yet I'm constantly wondering whether the stuff I'm seeing on these platforms are accurate or not. And it's interesting, to your point about QAnon, that it's often the stuff that is blatantly inaccurate that tends to be the most popular. Silky, please join in.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. One of the things that I also notice when it comes to the algorithm is that depending who your friends are and what they're looking at and what they're clicking on, that gets put into your feed as well. So I've been paying a close attention to that as well. And another thing, that in terms of like making sure that the content that you're seeing is accurate, sometimes I catch myself getting an interesting fact, and then I wonder, is this real, or do I need to dig into a little bit deeper? And I start reading the comments to kind of validate, to just see the different opinions. And I enjoy that very much, like seeing the different discussions that people have about a certain topic, and then from there build your own opinion about something. I think that's something that I do a lot.
Well, and I think you emphasize a really important fact, which is it's who we're connected to that influences what we see as much as training the algorithm itself.
Right.
And this is the big thing I've noticed on Twitter, where Twitter in the last few months has made a big change, where you'll see people you don't follow in your news feed because people you follow them. Right. So it's really extending into further and further kind of layers of connection. But the other side to this, to go back to something we've talked about in a few salons, which I'm curious to hear everyone's kind of perspective, is volume versus quality. Because, I personally prefer quality, right? And I tend to follow people or connect with people online who are posting at a reasonable pace. But when I look at the people who are really popular on LinkedIn, popular on Instagram, popular on TikTok, what they seem to have in common is volume and not quality. That they have consistency and frequency in terms of how often they're posting, but the quality of their content may be secondary. So here I'm curious to hear from our European friends who have long been arguing quality, where us North Americans have been saying, no, it's all volume. Does anyone want to pick a side as to whether, am I wrong in thinking that volume is a clear signifier of success when it comes to people on social media? Or is that just my own aversion? Both Christian and Jens unmuted. So both of you, please jump in.
Go for it, Jens.
Oh, okay. Just from the experience and what I heard from LinkedIn, they changed the algorithm to focus more on content which has a high quality content. So, and they measure it by how many comments there are and what sort of comments there are. So is it just a nice, great, or are there longer comments on it? How many comments are on there? So in the past, it was more on quantity. Now it changed to quantity. And the better the quantity, the more likely it is that the algorithm will put it into your feed. So quality will be the future.
And Christian, do you
On
think the
LinkedIn,
same
sorry.
applies to Instagram?
I think Instagram, it's more like quantity, because if you don't post like every day, your content is not relevant. And I'm like, for 3 years now, I'm like at like 6,300 followers, more or less, like 50 more or less, and it's not growing anywhere. So you have to post consistently to grow your followers.
But you would say post consistently quality content?
Maybe, I don't know. If you play around with AI a lot, you will find out that all the videos on YouTube that tell you how to grow your content is like, just put an AI on it that will write your content and create like videos and stuff. And I think it's not quality, and it's not personal. It's like made by a machine.
Well, and this is the danger, and Stro, I'll throw to you in a moment, that as the ChatGPT and other generative AI models become more accessible and easier to use, that social media will be even more flooded with noise. And I think we're starting to see this on LinkedIn, because you can kind of tell who's using ChatGPT to generate tons of LinkedIn posts. Stro, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, because I think quality is very subjective. Like, I don't think there's a standard for quality at all. I think it's actually consistency that matters, right? You'll find your audience, depending on how consistently you're putting out the content and on the subject itself, but I don't think there's a standard for quality at all. And I think that's what, that's where, and what does actually success look like? Is that getting a lot of followers? Is it monetizing? Or is it engaged, like actual engaged conversations, right? And I think this is as high a quality thing that there is on the internet, right? But it's small because you can only have so much quality. Like as soon as you go quantity, you lose quality. It's just the nature of the beast, right?
Although, before I throw to you, Jan, Rob, you posted something in the chat that I'd love for you to elaborate on, which is you argued volume and provocation, which strikes me as an interesting counter to AI, because I'm not sure AI can be provocative. Do you want to elaborate on what you meant?
I think it could be, but I've only read things that, like, Twitter/X, the more provocative, the more likely it is to breed and spread. But there's that, having an agenda, and then entertain me versus quality. It could be both. Some of the better content providers or posters provide a balance of both. They're not going to go on dryly about some esoteric topic that most of their audience is going to be interested in, unless it's happens to be that community exists around women's Milanese shoes of the 16th century or whatnot. But so quality versus entertainment, is it either or both?
Right on. Jan.
Yeah, I think Stroh's question with regards to what is success, right? How do you define success? I think that is really, really important. And then, the Instagram question, I now wonder whether, we have to answer your question, Jesse, quality over quantity, by the channel or by the platform, right? Or by the artist, right? What I mean with this is, you're absolutely right. The maximum duration of an Instagram story can be, I think, 15 seconds. And idiot who invests a week into developing one piece of that stuff. That said, when Christian, as a still photographer, posts stuff on Instagram and reposts it and posts it often, there are still good images, right? There are still good photos. It's not that, my mom took her camera and snapped a picture of my coffee mug. No, it's still a good picture. So, I think it probably depends on really your purpose and what you want to achieve there.
And, the dynamic nature of platforms is you can now have 60-second stories on Instagram, which I suspect is a response to TikTok, but I could be projecting. Sharita.
I have a question more than anything else, and that is, how do you become an influencer?
Hold on.
Oh.
That merited a laugh.
I would really like to know the answer.
I think it's subjective, right? I think, there are some people who would argue an influencer is entirely based on numbers. I think an English professor would argue that an influencer is defined by their influence. In other cases, you could have, to go back to quality, you could have an influencer with very small numbers, but a very important audience. So I think the influencer is largely subjective, but if we're going to use economic terms, you're getting paid to post.
Yeah.
Right? You're getting paid to endorse, you're getting paid. And like our EchoPunks Instagram account, which last I checked had 25 followers, had a request from someone who wanted the EchoPunks to wear particular glasses. So I think the barrier to entry for influencers is very low.
Don't say that. Don't say that, Jesse. Come on.
But at the same time, it is a very crowded marketplace. There are lots and lots of people who want to be influencers. And there was a recent article in the Washington Post about Mr. Beast, which is one of the top YouTubers. And I believe he lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And the East Carolina University has just created an influencer degree program because Mr. Beast needs to hire people. He's so popular, and he's collaborating with the local university to train young people to work on his team. So, influencers, I think, are what used to be journalists, what used to be broadcasters, what used to be credible personalities, only now the barrier to entry is 0. So anyone can aspire to be an influencer. But I think to be a successful influencer is a completely different can of fish. Go ahead, Jan.
Yeah, Sharita, once more. Brilliant question and a brilliant prompt because, influencers and our topic today, social media platforms, as you asked your question, it just dawned on me that your platform of choice, if you are an influencer, can actually become your job title. I sent something to Jesse on the weekend. It was an article about the celebrity that was the most tracked person during the New York City Marathon, which is run every year by 50,000 people. And the most tracked person, tracked meaning digitally tracked by people who downloaded the app or, tracked the race progress digitally, was a so-called YouTuber. It was not a actor or a musician or another sports celebrity. It was a YouTuber, an influencer, who then also had to give a ton of interviews because he was so much more popular than any other celebrity or any other person who ran that New York City Marathon.
But to your point, you call him a YouTuber and not an influencer.
Exactly. I haven't heard of an Instagrammer yet. Right, but I find it amazing.
But I think the first influencers were Instagrammers.
Yeah,
right. That Instagram, I think, was the platform that really helped influencers go mainstream versus Vine users or TikTok users or YouTubers or TikTokers. They are within the context in which their celebrity or economic power arose. But there is, of course, the interesting flip side, which is celebrities who become influencers and celebrities who use that celebrity power to then, turn that into money, whether endorsing products, whether doing commercials or all the different ways of monetizing attention. And I think it's interesting that our conversation started with the platforms we use, and we're now kind of coming to an end and looking at the larger economics of these platforms in terms of how they are creating a new tier of celebrity, or even what I think would be a new tier of politician, right? Because that is a lot of what influencers are, is they have constituents and they serve these constituents. And if they're successful at serving these constituents, that's how they're able to make a living. That's how they're able to get paid. So what are the one thing we haven't really talked about in this conversation that I have to kind of bring up at the end, only because I've got this little voice in my head saying, what if, is the issue of privacy. Because we've touched upon it, right? We've talked about the way in which our information is used. We've talked about the way in which, you know, the algorithm either works with us or works against us. Has concerns around privacy and digital platforms basically receded, right? Have we sort of gotten into embracing the idea that, you know, the reason these platforms, at least most of them, are free is because of the fact that we're being exposed to advertising and our information is being helped to train AI? Or is privacy something that, you know, is going to come back to the forefront, that people are going to be concerned about once again? It's just like all cycles of politics, it comes and goes. Anyone want to tackle that? Anyone still concerned about their privacy with these platforms? I'm not. I'm bringing this up only because I feel guilty about the fact that I'm not, right? There were a time where I was more vigilant about protecting my privacy, but I kind of feel now, to go to Jan's notion of the value exchange, that because I'm using it, I feel I am getting value, right? When I talk about TikTok, I say, yes, absolutely. The Chinese Communist Party is getting access to all of TikTok's data, and I'm okay with that, because TikTok is giving me the value that I want. So Murli, please, as the youngest here, do you worry about your privacy in terms of social media?
I would say that I worry more about it and am more concerned than most of my peers. But I also have the feeling that there's only so much you can do, because we are reliant on a lot of these systems, whether it's Instagram to stay connected and keep up with your friends, or Google to tell you how to get to where you're going. I think that there's so much dependency that, you know, and the narrative is such that there's not really an option. You have to accept the terms and conditions to just get by. So while I do my best to mitigate some privacy concerns by changing all the settings when possible, you know, using a VPN or a private browsing mode or an alternative search engine, I think to a certain extent, there's not much you can do. And most people have accepted that.
Anyone want to agree, disagree with Murli's suggestion that there's not much we can do? I mean, Lynn pointed out that in Europe, there are stronger privacy laws. So at least those of you who have the benefits of the European Union do have more protections than those of us here in North America.
Yeah, maybe a little too strong, in my opinion, in certain areas, right? I mean, in many ways, when I look at the European or the German privacy laws, I'm thinking, come on, people, you know, let's be honest here. You are not that interesting. No one really cares so much. But I do have to say that, you know, once you come to an age where you feel like, oh, you know, a certain health data with regards to, you know, my, you know, well-being could potentially be held against me, for example, by a health insurance company, right? That's then where I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute, I don't want people to know what I'm Googling, or you know, certain things I would rather be, you know, kept under wraps.
Stroh, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just had a thought come to mind, thinking that, you know, I think it's kind of an oxymoron to think of privacy on the internet, right? Like, you're connecting to everything. So the idea of going online is to actually connect. And so it is kind of a false security or a false idea of privacy ever if you're hopping on. It's just I think at this point, and we know what's happened in the past, like I don't think as soon as you have that you're connecting, you have no privacy. I think that's a given.
I mean, it does speak to the word log in, that when you log in, you're in the log, right? You're sort of submitting yourself to that surveillance. But I think the other side is consequences and impact. And there was an interesting study that came out this week that in the US, women are far less likely to share health data, in part because abortion is being criminalized, right? And a lot of women's health is being subject to extra scrutiny. So I think there is a tension that will continue to go between our desire to control our information and our identity and these platforms' desires to extract it, right? To use that information for all sorts of different purposes. And I think, Jan, your point about health really speaks to that. Now, we've run out of time, unfortunately, but I think part of the purpose of the topic today is platforms are a moving target. They're constantly evolving. They're constantly kind of changing in terms of the way the algorithm works and the way the information we get, and whether it is in an echo chamber or whether we are getting access to new sources. So I think we'll do this again, perhaps in the late winter or early spring, and sort of regularly have salons that circle back. You know, the larger question, next week, we're going to look at rudeness and public outrage and mental health, which certainly on the internet, there seems to be a lot of examples of that. So is it an algorithmic driven phenomena, or are we just all going nuts? And now we have a stage to share it with people. That'll be next week's topic. Until then, thanks a lot. It's been a lot of fun. I just ended the stream for LinkedIn, and now I will stop the recording for the podcast. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, Jesse. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.